He sold Tokyo's richest man a watch and created a 2.8 billion yen obsession. But the timepiece never ticked, the rental clients never existed, and the billionaire wasn't buying a luxury accessory. He was funding the most audacious Ponzi scheme in modern Japanese history. This is the story of Tokmach, a luxury watch-sharing service that promised the elite of Tokyo a 15% return for doing nothing. Its founder, Takazumi Fukuhara, wasn't a financier. He was a salesman who fabricated an entire economy of borrowed time. And his first client, a retail titan worth billions, would become his most powerful mark. But how do you sell a ghost? You build a stage so convincing, the billionaire forgets he's the only audience. In 2021, Takazumi Fukuhara began not with a scheme, but with a single, perfect observation. In the champagne rooms of Ginza's high-end watch dealers, he saw two kinds of wealthy men. Those who wore their Patek Philippe's and those who kept them locked in safes, afraid to scratch a $500,000 asset. His insight was simple: turn that fear into a business model. He called it asset-light luxury. He founded Tokmach. The pitch was elegant: entrust us your luxury watch. We will rent it to a vetted clientele, young executives, celebrities, aspiring tycoons who want the aura without the lifetime debt. You, the owner, receive a portion of the rental fee, a 15% annual return paid monthly for doing nothing. Your watch stays insured, polished, and safe. It was the ultimate passive income for the already rich. Fukuhara was 40, a career salesman with a history in electronics and timeshares. He understood desire better than finance. He rented a sleek office in Osaka, hired a skeleton staff, and invested in a website of pure fantasy. It featured smiling, blurred-faced clients wearing Rolexes at yacht parties and board meetings. None of them were real. But he needed credibility. He needed a first client so powerful, his name alone would become a seal of approval. He targeted the reclusive billionaire founder of a nationwide retail empire. A man with a known, obsessive collection of rare timepieces, worth over 3 billion yen. A man who never appeared in public, but whose influence was a ghost in the machine of Japanese commerce. Fukuhara didn't send a brochure. He orchestrated a coincidence. He learned the billionaire's personal secretary frequented a specific bar. Fukuhara became a regular. 6 weeks of casual conversation later, he reluctantly mentioned his new venture, framing it not as an investment but as a cultural service. "We're preserving heritage," he said, "letting masterpieces live." The secretary arranged a meeting, not in the billionaire's corporate tower but in a private viewing room at a Tokyo museum. Fukuhara arrived with a single, empty velvet case. He sold nothing but an idea. He spoke of legacy, of watches as circulating art, of creating a new economy of access. He never once mentioned the 15%. The billionaire, intrigued, offered a test. A single, modest Audemars Piguet from his collection, valued at 20 million yen. 1 week after the watch was deposited, a bank transfer landed in the billionaire's account. 190,000 yen, the first rental fee. Fukuhara had paid it from his own capital. It was a losing bet designed to win a war. The following week, another payment, and another. For 3 months, the billionaire received steady, silent income. The watch, according to Tokmach's elegant PDF reports, was being worn by a Silicon Valley founder on a tour of Kyoto. Satisfied, the billionaire made his second move. He entrusted not 1 but 7 watches, a collection including a platinum Rolex Daytona and a vintage Vacheron Constantin, with a combined value of 180 million yen. The monthly payments ballooned. Fukuhara now had to generate over 2 million yen every month just to service this one client. He couldn't, so he used the billionaire's own legend as a lure. He whispered to a circle of trusted intermediaries that the retail titan was a silent partner in Tokmach, that his involvement was a sign of unshakable viability. The floodgates opened. A famous television comedian, paid a hefty endorsement fee, became the public face. Articles were placed in luxury magazines. The scheme was no longer a small con. It was a social contagion. By late 2022, over 300 watches filled Tokmech's climate-controlled vaults, a glittering, immobilized fortune. Fukuhara's problem became logistical. The promised rental economy was a phantom. There were no clients. To pay the mounting returns to early depositors, he had only one real asset: the watches themselves. He made his first discreet sale to a second-hand dealer in Osaka, a Patek Nautilus for 15 million yen. The owner's monthly fee was paid from its own sale price. It was a perfect, closed loop of cannibalization. As long as new watches kept arriving, the old watches could be quietly liquidated to fuel the illusion. The entire operation balanced on a single, accelerating assumption: infinite growth. But then the billionaire did something unexpected. He didn't ask for his money, he asked for his watch, a specific one, the Daytona, for his son's graduation. Fukuhara's system faced its first true audit. The watch was gone, sold 6 months prior. The vault held a void. Fukuhara stalled. He cited a long-term rental contract with a fictitious Taiwanese businessman. He offered a double payment as a cancellation penalty. The billionaire's office was silent for a week. Then a new request arrived, not from an assistant but from the billionaire's personal lawyer. He requested a full, notarized inventory report and the insurance documents for all 7 watches. The tone was not suspicious, yet it was procedural, the kind of due diligence that precedes a much larger investment. Fukuhara stood in the vault, surrounded by empty boxes and a dwindling stock of timepieces, realizing the ghost he'd sold was now asking for a body. He had days, perhaps hours, before the entire stage collapsed, and his only move was to build a bigger, more dangerous lie. Fukuhara's response was not a retreat, but a breathtaking offensive. He didn't forge the documents. He created an entirely new company to validate them. He incorporated a shell firm in Singapore called Horological Asset Guarantee Limited, rented a virtual office, and hired a freelance graphic designer to create a professional website and letterhead. Then he sent the billionaire's lawyer a beautifully bound report, stamped and notarized, attesting to the independent valuation and insurance of all 7 watches. The insurance provider listed was a subsidiary of Lloyd's of London. Every detail was fictitious. It bought him 30 days, but the cost of the lie was a new, fixed overhead. He now had to maintain the illusion of a functioning INTERN, a TION, a L Chinese letter business. More urgently, he needed to refill the vault. The billionaire's Daytona was gone. To replace it, Fukuhara initiated Operation Mirror. He used company funds to purchase a visually identical, but less valuable, aftermarket Daytona from a dealer in Hong Kong. He placed it in the original slot. If a casual inspection occurred, it would pass, but the serial numbers were different. It was a stopgap made of smoke. The pressure now came from a different vector: volume. The influx of new watches from smaller investors was staggering. By mid-2023, Tokmech held over 800 timepieces. The monthly return payments had ballooned to a cash burn of over 100 million yen. The only way to fuel it was to sell the watches faster. Fukuhara and his right-hand man, former employee Taishi Nakayama, systematized the liquidation. They cultivated relationships with over 100 pawn shops and second-hand dealers across 6 prefectures, never selling too many pieces to any single store. The watches moved in a frantic, silent circuit. A Rolex Submariner would arrive from a dentist in Kyoto on Monday. By Wednesday, it was sold to a pawn shop in Fukuoka. By Friday, the proceeds were converted to cryptocurrency and funneled back into Tokmech's operating account to pay the dentist his rental income the following Monday. The watches weren't assets. They were disposable fuel for a furnace that demanded more every month. But the billionaire's silence was the loudest sound in Fukuhara's life. The lawyer had accepted the fake report, but there was no follow-up, no word of the larger investment. It was the calm before an unknowable storm. Fukuhara interpreted this as victory. He decided to double down on the very thing that had almost exposed him, celebrity endorsement. He signed a 2-year exorbitant contract with a popular man's comedy duo, having them star in a series of high-production value online commercials. The comedians, believing they were promoting a legitimate tech startup, joked about renting a personality and time you can borrow. The campaign went viral. Deposit inquiries tripled. The vault swelled to over 1,200 watches. The machinery was now so large, so loud, that Fukuhara could no longer hear its fatal creaks. Then the first crack appeared from within. A junior accountant, a woman in her 20s named Eiko, was reconciling payments. She noticed a pattern. Watch serial numbers logged as on rental in their internal system would appear again months later as returned and reinspected. But the payment logs showed continuous rental fees being paid throughout that entire period. No watch, according to the system, was ever idle. It was statistically impossible. She took her concern to Nakayama. He patted her shoulder. The system has some legacy glitches. We're updating it. Don't worry. Eiko did worry. She began a private spreadsheet. She cross-referenced vague client aliases from rental reports with public records. She found nothing. The Silicon Valley founder renting the billionaire's first watch had no digital footprint. The K-pop idol renting a diamond-studded Richard Mille did not exist. One night, working late, she accessed the server logs. She found the admin credentials for the Horological Asset Guarantee website. The site's creation date was 3 months ago. Its only visitor, according to the logs, was an IP address registered to Tokmatch's Osaka office. She had uncovered not a glitch but a galaxy of fiction. The next morning, she requested a meeting with Fukuhara. She presented her findings calmly, professionally, suggesting a forensic audit to protect the company. Fukuhara listened, his face a mask of concern. He thanked her for her diligence. He told her she was precisely the kind of employee they needed. He promoted her on the spot, giving her a significant raise and a new title, Head of Compliance. Her first task, he said, was to build a proper internal audit framework. It was a masterstroke. He had turned his whistleblower into a contained, compromised insider. Her silence was now purchased, and her suspicions could be managed from the inside. But the promotion did something else. It gave Eiko access to the full financial pipeline. And what she saw terrified her more than any glitch. She saw the crypto transfers, millions of yen flowing into anonymous wallets on offshore exchanges, then cycling back. She saw the spreadsheets tracking watch sales to pawn shops, with columns for original owner and sale price. She realized the entire operation was a closed loop of consumption. The company was eating itself. She made a choice. Instead of going to the police, she began documenting everything. She took screenshots, downloaded transaction records, and saved copies of the fake rental client profiles. She compiled a digital dossier, and she waited. Her conscience was now a time bomb with an unknown fuse. Meanwhile, the external pressure Fukuhara had dismissed arrived with the subtlety of a tax bill. A business magazine, tipped off by a rival in the finance sector, began digging into the watch-sharing economy. A reporter called Tokmatch for comment, asking pointed questions about their revenue model and client verification. Fukuhara, a salesman to his core, invited the reporter for an exclusive tour of their secure vault facility. He staged a masterpiece. He rented a high-security storage unit in Kobe for a week, transferred 200 of the remaining best watches into it, and hired temporary actors to pose as busy logistics and client relations staff. The tour was a performance of pristine legitimacy. The reporter left impressed. The article that followed was a glowing profile of innovation in legacy assets. Fukuhara had turned the threat into free advertising. His confidence peaked. He began planning an expansion into Hong Kong and Singapore. This confidence bred carelessness. To fund the expansion, Nakayama began selling watches in larger batches. A lot of 15 high-value pieces was sold to a single pawnshop chain in Tokyo. One of those watches, a rare A. Lange & Surin, was recognized by its original owner, a financier, when he spotted it in the shop's display window months later. He had never authorized its sale. He called Tokmatch furious. Nakayama blamed a catastrophic database error and a rogue employee. He offered to buy the watch back at twice its current market value. The financier, pacified by the extreme offer, agreed, but the seed of doubt was planted. He mentioned the strange incident at his club. The story began to circulate in the very circles Tokmatch depended on. The noose was tightening from two directions: a silent, documenting insider and a growing whisper network among the elite. Fukuhara's solution was to accelerate the endgame. He decided to extract his own capital. He began siphoning larger portions of the watch sale proceeds into his personal cryptocurrency accounts, moving funds through mixing services to obscure the trail. He started talking about taking the company public to his inner circle, a fantasy exit that would never happen. In January 2024, the trigger was pulled, not by a victim or a reporter, but by the silent partner. The billionaire's lawyer made a second request. This time, it was not for paperwork. It was for a physical, independent inspection of the 7 watches, to be conducted by a certified appraiser from the Japan Watch and Clock Association. The appointment was set for 1 week hence. There was no refusal possible. Fukuhara knew the game was over. The mirrored Daytona would be discovered. The fake insurance would unravel. The entire house of cards would collapse under the weight of a single appraiser's loop. That evening, he called a board meeting of one, himself. He dissolved Tokmatch's operating company, Neo Reverse. The next morning, January 31st, with $20 million in cryptocurrency now secured in offshore wallets, he boarded a first-class flight to Dubai. He left behind a vault of empty boxes, a staff of confused employees, and a city of elites about to discover their timeless assets were just gone with the time. The silence in the vault was not empty, it was full of screaming questions. The appointed appraiser arrived with the billionaire's lawyer to find the Tokmatch office locked, the staff scattered, and the CEO's seat cold. But the real discovery was in the secure facility in Kobe. Of the 200 watches staged for the reporter, only 47 remained. The rest were cheap replicas, their weight all wrong. The billionaire's Daytona was not the mirrored substitute. It was a 5,000 yen counterfeit from Thailand. The lawyer made one call. Within an hour, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police's Financial Crimes Unit was inside. They found a digital crime scene. The servers were still running. The first officers to access the system were met with a cascade of automated payment orders, about to dispatch another 120 million yen to depositors that very day. They stopped the transfers. Then they found Aiko. She was at her apartment, the digital dossier ready on an encrypted drive. She handed it over without a word. The spreadsheet was a map of the entire fraud, detailing the sale of over 1,300 watches through 114 different resellers. The scale was unprecedented. This wasn't a simple theft. It was a dismantling of trust performed in plain sight. Police estimates placed the total market value of the missing watches at over 2.8 billion yen, but the true cost was the network of victims. 650 people, from 80-year-old collectors to 30-year-old tech workers who had invested their bonuses. The media, tipped off by the police raid, descended. The story exploded. Luxury watch SHARING service exposed as billion yen PONZI. The comedian spokespeople publicly severed ties, claiming they too were deceived. The investigation moved at 2 speeds. The public face was a frantic race against time to locate and secure the sold watches before they disappeared into the global secondary market. Detectives fanned out across the country, visiting pawnshops with printouts of serial numbers. It was a forensic treasure hunt. In Yokohama, they recovered a Patek Philippe sold just 3 days prior. In Osaka, a dealer had already shipped a batch of 10 to a buyer in Switzerland. The police managed to intercept the shipment at Narita Airport. But the deeper, quieter investigation was the hunt for the architect. Flight records showed Fukuhara had landed in Dubai. The United Arab Emirates has no extradition treaty with Japan. He was beyond reach, a ghost in a tax-free oasis. All they could do was watch his digital shadow. Forensic accountants traced the cryptocurrency flows from the company wallets. The money had been laundered through a series of mixing services and landed in wallets on exchanges known for lax KYC rules. Some of it had been converted into digital casino chips on online gambling platforms, a near-perfect way to obscure a trail. Then, the first major break came not from Dubai, but from down the hall. Teishi Nakayama, Fukuhara's right-hand man, had not fled. He was arrested at his home in Kobe, caught trying to wipe his laptop. Facing charges of aggravated fraud that carried a potential 15-year sentence, he chose to cooperate. His testimony was the key that unlocked the machine's inner workings. He walked the police through Operation Mirror. He identified the Hong Kong dealer. He provided the contact lists for the pawnshop network. He explained the creation of the fake SING, a PORE Chinese letter firm. But his most devastating revelation was about the pace. "We knew from month 6 it was impossible," he told detectives. "The math didn't work. The 15% return required a rental fee so high, no one would ever pay it. The entire business plan was a joke, but the money kept coming in, so we kept spending it." He revealed the pressure Fukuhara felt from the billionaire's passive, looming presence. That first client wasn't a client. He was the foundation of the lie. Every decision after that was about protecting that one relationship. When he asked for the watch back, it was like the foundation asked for its cornerstone. The whole building had to invent a new reality to keep from falling. With Nakayama's guidance, police uncovered the second layer of the scheme, the systematic asset stripping. They found hidden ledgers tracking which watches had been sold to pay which owners' returns. A 70-year-old doctor from Nagoya had been receiving steady income for 18 months. The watch generating that income had been sold in his 4th month. For over a year, he was being paid with his own money minus Fukuhara's cut. The cruelty was in the arithmetic. Public outrage turned to anguish as victims began to come forward. A widow in her 60s had deposited her late husband's entire collection, his life's passion, for the promised safe income. It was all gone. A young couple had used their wedding savings to buy a Rolex as an investment asset to deposit with Tokmatch, convinced by the celebrity ads. They now held a worthless contract and debt. But the system had one final, shocking twist to reveal. As police compiled the list of defrauded watches, they noticed anomalies. Some serial numbers appeared twice. A watch reported stolen by an owner in 2022 was also listed as deposited with Tokmatch by a different person in 2023. Fukuhara and Nakayama hadn't just taken watches from willing depositors. They had also been buying stolen goods on the black market at a discount and using them to pad the vault's inventory, legitimizing them with fake deposit paperwork. The Ponzi scheme was also a fence operation. The Interpol warrant for Fukuhara's arrest was issued. Japanese authorities applied diplomatic pressure on the UAE. Meanwhile, in Dubai, Fukuhara was not in hiding. He was living in a luxury apartment in the marina, using encrypted messaging apps. He believed he was untouchable. He began to make mistakes. He used a portion of the stolen funds to invest in a local cryptocurrency venture, leaving a fresh financial footprint. He even gave an interview to a niche fintech blog under a pseudonym, boasting about disrupting asset liquidity. The arrogance was a beacon. Back in Tokyo, the billionaire broke his silence, not with a statement, but with an action. He used his corporate legal team to file a civil suit not just against Fukuhara, but against the celebrity endorsers and the magazines that ran the uncritical profiles, alleging negligent misrepresentation. It was a warning shot to the entire ecosystem that had enabled the fraud. The scandal was now a multi-front war, criminal, civil, and reputational. The police, armed with Nakayama's confession and the evidence from the servers, began to piece together Fukuhara's exit strategy. The cryptocurrency trail, though obscured, had a destination. A significant portion of the funds had been converted into a stablecoin and parked in a wallet whose private key was held by a digital asset custody service in Singapore. To access it, Fukuhara would need to identify himself. They had a wiretap on the custody service. They just had to wait for him to call. Then, in March 2024, the trap sprang from an unexpected direction. Fukuhara, growing restless and perhaps overconfident, attempted to move a large sum from his Singapore wallet to a Dubai-based exchange to cash out. The custody service, alerted by Interpol, delayed the transaction and initiated enhanced identity checks. Frustrated, Fukuhara called their helpline from his Dubai mobile phone. The number was recorded. The call was triangulated. His sanctuary was compromised. The Dubai police, presented with the evidence and the location, moved. They arrested Takazumi Fukuhara in a coffee shop near the Burj Khalifa. He was carrying a laptop containing the keys to several cryptocurrency wallets. The ghosts had been given a body, and the body was in handcuffs. The extradition battle would be long, but the architect was finally in a cage. For the 650 victims, it was the beginning of a new, more painful phase. The realization that catching the thief did not bring back their treasure. The watches were still gone, scattered across the world. And the only thing left to hunt for was justice, which pays no monthly returns. The extradition fight lasted 14 months. Fukuhara fought it with every legal tool, arguing the charges were commercial, not criminal. But in May 2025, escorted by Japanese detectives, he stepped off a government jet at Haneda Airport, back into the jurisdiction of the 2.8 billion yen ghost he created. The trial at the Tokyo District Court would not be about whether the scheme happened, but about what exactly to call it. The prosecution's case was a mountain of digital evidence, physical ledgers, and the damning testimony of Teishi Nakayama. They framed it as aggravated fraud on an unprecedented scale, a systematic betrayal of trust targeting society's most guarded asset, the illusion of security among the wealthy. Fukuhara's defense was simpler. He admitted to the facts but argued intent. He claimed he truly believed in the sharing economy model, that operational failures and market conditions doomed it, and that his flight to Dubai was panic, not premeditated theft. The trial became a public dissection of greed, both the defendants and the victims. One by one, depositors took the stand. The widow from Nagoya described the hollow feeling of opening her safe deposit box to retrieve her husband's Patek for the trial, only to remember it was gone. The young tech worker recounted how the slick online ads and comedian endorsements made the 15% return feel like an insider secret, not a statistical impossibility. Then the billionaire's testimony arrived, not in person but through a written statement read by his lawyer. It was cold, precise, and devastating. It detailed the initial meetings, the test with the single watch, the building of trust based on consistent, if suspiciously perfect, returns. It concluded, the defendant did not just steal property. He manufactured a reality in which theft appeared as innovation. My failure was not financial, it was imaginative. I did not imagine someone could build a cathedral of lies on a foundation of nothing. The climax came when Fukuhara himself took the stand in March 2026. Under questioning, his salesman's facade finally cracked. When asked to explain the basic economics of the promised returns, he stumbled. When shown the fake rental client profiles, he had no explanation for their non-existence. Finally, the prosecutor asked the simplest question. Mr. Fukuhara, in the entire operation of Tokmatch, how many genuine, arm's-length rentals of a deposited watch ever actually occurred? The courtroom was silent. Fukuhara looked down at his hands. He said quietly, there were hardly any people borrowing the watches. The admission, once spoken, seemed to shrink him. The elaborate fiction of a sharing economy vaporized, leaving only the bare bones of a Ponzi scheme. The verdict was swift, guilty on all counts of aggravated fraud. The sentence, 12 years in prison. Nakayama, for his cooperation, received 4 years. The judgment included a crushing order for restitution, 2.8 billion yen. It was a symbolic figure. Fukuhara's seized assets, the cryptocurrency, the Dubai apartment proceeds, amounted to less than 300 million yen. The rest was smoke. But the story's true resolution was not in the courtroom. It was in the ongoing, grinding effort of recovery. A dedicated police unit continued to track the dispersed watches across the globe. Using the serial number database from Aiko's dossier and Nakayama's dealer lists, they had recovered about 900 of the 1,700 watches by late 2026. It was a partial victory. A Rolex would be found in a Las Vegas pawn shop. An Audemars Piguet was tracked to a collector in Germany who had bought it in good faith. Each recovery was a bureaucratic and emotional ordeal. The police had to legally seize the watch, often compensating the innocent current holder, then navigate the process of returning it to the original Japanese owner. Some victims, upon getting their watch back after years, reported feeling nothing but a dull sadness. The object was now a relic of their own credulity. The billionaire never recovered his 7 watches. They had been among the first sold and were long gone into untraceable chains. He withdrew his civil suit against the celebrities and magazines, a quiet closure. His legacy, in the end, was not as a victim but as the unwitting cornerstone. His name had been the keystone of the lie, and its removal had brought the whole structure down. The wider cultural impact was a deep chill in Japan's sharing economy for luxury goods. Similar watch rental startups folded, unable to secure trust or funding. The phrase, like Tokmatch, entered business vernacular as a warning against models that were too good to be true. The comedians who had endorsed the service saw their careers dented, a lesson in the price of borrowed credibility. And what of Aiko, the accountant who documented the fraud? She was never charged. She changed industries, leaving finance altogether. In a rare interview, she said, "I don't feel like a whistleblower. I feel like someone who finally read the instructions on a bomb that was already ticking." The strange part is that for a while, everyone in the room was admiring the ticking, calling it music. The final, surprising twist emerged a year after the verdict. Forensic accountants, doing a final sweep of the cryptocurrency trails, discovered a series of transactions they had previously missed. In the months before his arrest, Fukuhara had not just moved money to casinos. He had used a small fraction of the funds, about 10 million yen, to make anonymous donations. The donations went to charities supporting elderly care and disability services in Osaka, the city where he started his business. There was no note, no explanation, just a string of crypto transfers from a burned wallet to institutional addresses. It was an inexplicable footnote, a gesture of either guilt, irony, or a last attempt at narrative control, forever hidden inside a blockchain. In his prison cell, Fukuhara reportedly spends his time reading, not financial journals but novels. He has told a social worker he is particularly interested in stories about grand illusions and the people who choose to believe them. The watches, the real ones, continue their journeys. Some are back on wrists in Tokyo. Some are in evidence lockers. Some are forever lost, telling time for new owners in different countries, their history wiped clean. The promise of the hook, the mysterious purchase that created an obsession, was fulfilled, but not as anyone expected. The billionaire obsession wasn't with a watch. It was briefly with an idea, a fantasy of frictionless wealth. And Fukuhara's obsession was with the billionaire's belief itself. He didn't sell a timepiece. He sold a mirror, and the reflection it showed was so appealing, an entire city forgot to check if there was glass. So what does the Tokmatch scandal leave us with, other than a 12-year prison sentence and 900 recovered watches? It leaves a blueprint, a map of how to construct a reality so compelling, it temporarily suspends the oldest question. If it's too good to be true, then what exactly is it? The answer in this case was a story about modern alchemy, where gold wasn't created from lead but borrowed from tomorrow to pay for yesterday. It exploited a very specific 21st century vulnerability, the desire for legacy assets to behave like tech stocks. We want our heirlooms to be liquid, our history to pay dividends. Fukuhara didn't invent that desire. He just built a bridge to it and charged a toll to cross. The victims weren't foolish. They were logical within the story they were sold. The comedian's smile, the sleek website, the glowing magazine article, and most of all, the silent endorsement of a titan, these weren't just marketing. They were the walls of the reality tunnel. Once inside, the 15% return wasn't an outrageous promise. It was the natural weather. This story isn't really about watches. It's about trust in an age where trust can be engineered. The certificate from the fake SING, a PORE Chinese letter firm, was more real to the lawyer than the absent watch. The digital PDF report held more weight than the empty velvet box. We have begun to trust the interface more than the object, the data more than the thing it describes. The lingering question is not whether another Fukuhara is out there. He is. The question is what he's selling now. The formula is eternal. Identify an inert asset, promise to animate it, use the first believer's credibility as fuel, and always be selling the future to pay for the present. It works with watches, with real estate, with carbon credits, with crypto. The vessel changes, the ghost inside it does not. The billionaire got his obsession, though not the one he paid for. His obsession became understanding how he was used. For the rest of us, the lesson is in the quiet space between a thing and its story. A watch tells time. A story about a watch can tell you anything. The most dangerous luxury is the one we never touch, the one we only believe in. If you want to understand how reality gets built and sold, you're in the right place. Dive deeper into the architecture of deception with us. Subscribe, and we'll keep pulling back the curtain.